I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today we will be pruning a knockout rose bush. This bush is actually a great looking specimen, but we can still use it for purposes of the video. We will be shortening this quite a bit. It's about 4 feet tall now, and by the time we're done it will be about half that height. But when you're working with roses or anything that has thorns, you want to wear long cuffed sleeves. You want your personal protective gear. Don't get an eye scratch. It's a little warm today, but I'm wearing long sleeves because I do not want to leave here all scratched up. And again, with roses, they are a bit of a disease magnet, so definitely sanitize your tools before you start. And then if you have multiple rose bushes, sanitize them in between each bush. And if for any reason you think you have some disease on your rose, once you remove a diseased piece, sanitize the pruner again. It may sound excessive, but the last thing you want to do is transmit that disease on unsanitized pruners. Roses are a cane shrub, so as we do with almost every cane shrub, we're going to go down and start at the ground and work our way up. And having looked at this, I think all the cuts today I can make, most of them with my hand pruners, which are sanitized, and there's a couple larger ones that I may need loppers. I've cleaned out all the mulch around the base of this, and on a rose bush we normally want 3 to 5 main canes. And we just happen to have a beautiful cane here, a second one here in the front, a third one, not exactly in the middle, but it's got room, a fourth one here, and then closer to me is a very small fifth one. So I'm going to suggest that we keep this smaller one and give it time to grow a bit. So we're at 5 and they're pretty well spaced, so I'm not going to remove any of those and go down to 4 or 3 canes. We will keep the 5 major canes. What I do have coming off of this main cane in the front is a cane that comes out to the side, which is okay, or a branch that comes out to the side. But coming off of it is this one that wants to grow back into the center, and in fact is trying to rub against this new one that we're given another year to grow. So this is going to be my first cut, is to get that out of there, growing back against the center. And then again, this main cane coming out the front has a branch that comes off to the side, which we're going to keep, but it has a second branch that also comes back through here. So we're going to take that off. And that thins it out just a little bit. And this is why we wear protective gear. So now, while I'm down in here, I'm also looking for, do we have crossing rubbing branches? Do we have anything that's dead, diseased, or dying? There's a little brown wood here that just breaks off easily. If it bends, it's not dead. And here we've got some growth that I think I want to take this one that's growing straight up. Even though I'm wearing gloves, I'm still trying to avoid the thorns. So now from where I am in the back, I'm looking largely at the center, and eventually I will work my way back around to the front. In fact, I can probably reach through here a little bit. If we come off this main cane here, we've got quite a few little side branches, and we're going to reduce that a bit. I'll start by thinning it rather than taking the whole thing off. And we've got a little bit of damage here, about a 2-inch little stub. This one in the back wants to grow back in towards the center. And I'm going to pause at the moment and take another look at this. You can see the spent flowers from last year, so this was not deadheaded, but that's not a big deal because when we finally get to reducing the height, that's going to all come off. But working here in the front, you can see we have quite a bit of growth. And looking here, we just have too many little side branches. And at the moment, I'm taking everything off where it connects to a branch. And here's an interesting coming off this. It tends to come straight up off the branch, but it's growing back in towards the center. So we'll take that. That opens it up a bit. And then when we look around, this is rubbing against here. A lot of times what happens, particularly in winter, when they're this tall, they can start to whip around, and the rubbing branches with thorns will do damage. But when I was looking at this before we started, I actually see little to no winter kill. I just see, a little bit of dead tissue, but I can't say that it was winter kill. So, okay, we've got this that it comes up and makes a T, and one piece grows back in the center and the other one grows down. We don't really want a rose cane that grows down, so we'll take that out. Now I've got this one that's going to be a reduction cut. So let me finish thinning here and getting some stuff out of the middle. This wants to grow back into the middle, or at least part of it does. Again, every cut I've made so far has been where one branch attaches to the larger branch. Here's another. And this is another one of those things where even when I think I'm done, we'll come back and say, oh yeah, well, what about this? Okay, those two, they want to rub. And if we look at this branch is okay coming out this way, but then we have this one that wants to grow back into the center and is rubbing against the one behind it. So we'll take that out. Here's a little bit of dead. And when you look at something you've cut, that's less than 1/8 of an inch, so it's not a good example. Again, when we make a heading cut, I'll show you that live tissue should be nice and plump and have a whitish color. And if you don't see that, then we'll just go a little shorter. But we're not to that point yet. We're still just kind of thinning out the center and taking off where things attach to a main stem. Trying to open up the center a little bit and reduce the amount of rubbing crossing branches. This plant looked pretty airy to start with, so let's see. That's all tangled up. When they want to get tangled in each other, one of them's got to go. So we've opened up the front here a little bit. There's probably a few more I can take off. But let me stand back up, and now we'll start working on the reduction in height. I said in reducing the height, we would want to go from the current 4 feet down to about 2 feet. But I want to make a couple cuts in the front so you can see. So in shortening this, now I'm not taking it off where one branch connects to another. I want to take it off where there's a bud node. And since I don't want to create a situation of new growth coming back into the center, I always want to make the cut out an outward facing bud. So as I come up this stem, here is my first outward facing bud. So I'm going to make the cut there. Now I realize this is still a little more than 24 inches, but it's big enough for me to now show you that that cut has nice white interior to it. Get this shadow off of it maybe. Okay, so we may end up taking that a little lower. If I come over to the one beside it, we have lots of nice little buds coming out the back, but here's one that's facing forward. So again, there's a nice clean cut and nice white center of the cane. So I'm just going to keep coming around here in the front and taking off at outward facing buds. If I cut it at a bud that's on the inside, then that new growth is going to come back into the center, and I'm just making more work for next year's pruning. So as often as possible, we want to make the cuts at an outward facing bud. So I'll keep that, and I'll just go a little higher this year. But outward facing bud, right there's one. So we'll shorten it here in the front a bit. Here's a bud that comes out towards me as opposed to back into the center. And you will notice that this rose bush has quite a few leaves on it. And when I got here today, I truly was surprised to see that, because the general rule of thumb is you prune roses before they leaf out, and pruning is usually done while forsythia are in bloom. Well, the forsythia are in bloom, but this rose is a little early, and I think it's because it's A, close to the house, and B, has a great southern exposure. So it gets sun all day long. Okay, so we'll just keep... Now we're making reduction cuts, and these are being made at a bud where it's growing in the correct direction. Let me move around here. This one coming out the back. Again, I'm always cutting at a bud, and I want that bud to be outward facing. Now, when we get to the center, you know, it's not so much outward facing. I may, in fact, want it to grow back towards me. That's outward facing, just not back into the center. And this is also why we prune, because they tend to get tangled up in each other. So my best choice is there. At this point now, I'm just reducing the height. So we're going to stop the camera while I keep shortening this. As you can see, we have thinned this out some more. We've shortened it. We are not down to 2 feet, which is what I thought we might do. But when I look at the pile of debris that we have, I'm also cognizant of the general rule of not to remove more than 1/3 of the volume of the plant. And I think we're approaching that. So we're going to leave it at this height. But you can see that it has been significantly thinned out, and things are growing out and away from the center. And then the last thing we want to do, and we've done some already, here's one that's already been dabbed, a large cut that was dabbed with glue. And right above it is another one that I will, and this is just white Elmer's multi-purpose glue. And the reason we do this is there are cane borers that will go after any stem. They need a stem at least the size or bigger than a number 2 pencil. So we're not covering every cut, but we are dabbing any of the larger cuts, because the cane borer is actually the larva of several different types of beetles, wasps, and bees. And while the beetles, wasps, and bees are good guys, taking care of aphids and the like, their larvae can do damage to the canes. So by putting a dab of glue on here, the adult female will not attempt to lay eggs in these stems, and somehow the adult females know the stems need to be a certain diameter for their larvae to thrive and survive and live on and create the next generation. So this is the final step we're going to do, is just finish dabbing these larger cuts with a little bit of white glue, and that keeps the adult female from laying her eggs and letting the larva grow in these canes. So again, KnockOut roses, it took about 15 years of hybridization to come up with these, and so you'll notice there's always a registered trademark on them. They're largely a hybrid, so keep the graft union up and out of the soil, and always watch for disease. In East Tennessee, where we have warm, hot, humid summers, they're really prone to fungal diseases. So if you're going to grow roses, you need to have a pretty high maintenance program on them to prevent things. Once the fungal disease is set in, you can manage it, but you'll probably never wipe it out. And of course, the one disease you're really looking for is rose rosette. And as much as it hurts, if you see the sign of rose rosette, the plant needs to go. There are some folks who would say you can prune out the disease part, but you never know that you got all of it. So if you see rose rosette, take out the plant and bag it up and trash it. Do not compost it. Do not burn it, because you'll just release the disease into the air. And you know, if you've got a row of these and one of them gets the disease, then you better hurry and address that, or it will spread to the rest of your roses. So again, these roses have thorns. Wear your protective gear, your safety glasses, your long-sleeved cuffed gloves, and thin it out. Airflow and sunshine is one of the best ways to keep these things healthy, and the annual pruning to thin it out, clear the center, get rid of those rubbing branches, because rubbing branches with thorns will do a lot of damage. And you will be amazed at how much this will grow this summer. And next year you'll be back taking out another 1/3 of the plant again. We thank you for joining us, and I hope you learned something today.